Hello Laziali all over the world, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile and unfortunately it's over. Lazio has no more chance to reach the Champions League. Drawing against Inter and with Roma beating Genoa last night, hope that was very slim, Alasdair, are now completely gone. Now we have to see if Lazio will finish and qualify for the Europe League or for the Conference League. If I'm not wrong, we need just 1 point to reach the Europe League. So there's Lazio Sassuolo next weekend. We still don't know at what time, but we should make it, right, Alistair? We should reach the Europe League again.
Isn't this the kind of thrilling climax to a season that you live for? You know, it really gets the heart pumping. Will we qualify for the Europa League or the Conference League? Yeah, I mean, 1 point is enough. And even if we lose, you know, we still need Fiorentina to win both of their games and for the goal difference to stay in their favor for, actually, it would stay in their favor. But,
yep.
I mean, it looks very likely, let's be honest. One of Fiorentina's games is against Atalanta as well. So, yeah, it's a shame about the Champions League. I mean, obviously, we'll get onto the game, but just the fact that Lazio looked like they were at least going to take that to the final day in terms of who finishes in sixth, Roma or Lazio. There's been quite a lot of confusion about what the sixth place means, but essentially, if Atalanta win the Europa League and finish fifth, but no higher, then sixth place will be a Champions League spot. So there is, you know, that was something that was available, I guess.
Yes, Lazio had to win yesterday and then hope that they beat Sassuolo and Roma doesn't win against Empoli. Empoli still, they need points to be safe. So there were some chance for Lazio, but Dumfries' goal at 87 minutes pretty much end our hopes. But talking about Inter Lazio, Alasdair, probably our best performance so far this season with Igor Tudor. I thought Lazio played a great football against the best team in Italy. So yeah, it was encouraging, right? A little bit too late because the season is over, but at least we saw a good game, a good away game, which is very important for Lazio as we lost pretty much every single game away against big team. So it was encouraging signing or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be people who put a slight asterisk on the game just because Inter have already won the title. Obviously, they didn't have the necessarily the same motivation they might on a normal Inter Lazio match. But then again, Inzaghi picked the strongest team he had. The stadium was ready to celebrate the Scudetto, so they wanted to go out on a high in their final home game of the season. They were still chasing, you know, various kind of records of points tallies and so on. So I don't think this was a friendly match in the way that some people would have you believe. And I think as well that probably, I don't know if you agree with this, but the most encouraging thing was probably the fact that Tudor's team selection, which once again was slightly wild, it was essentially him picking next season's team, wasn't it? He kind of got rid of Immobile, Alberto, Felipe Anderson, guys who were not sure are going to be there next season. And he picked a team that easily could be a Lazio starting 11 next year. And they got a good result. I mean, even though it probably should have been a win, which we'll get onto, it was still a good result to see that team missing so many players who are on the bench, still go and perform in that way and play a really good game against the best team by far in Italy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you and say this. For me, this is the Lazio of the future because with that selection, we saw a more dynamic type of football. Luis Alberto is a huge talent, but we have to be honest, he tends to slow down the pace. He loves to touch the ball far too much, and this inevitable slows down the speed of Lazio's game. And I think in Tudor's mind, he wants a more dynamic team, and with Kamada instead of Luis Alberto, with Rovella back, etc., we saw a much more dynamic and physical, because Pellegrini playing instead of his eye, it's definitely a more physical team. So I thought we played a very good first half. Again, as you were mentioning, we created chances and we wasted chances. We'll have to talk again about Tati Castellanos. But yeah, I thought this was a glimpse of our future. Obviously, we hope you're gonna have signing coming in and changing a little bit the team. I think Guendouzi, we have to consider him a starter next season instead of Vecino, even though Vecino played well. But it was really encouraging because I think, Tudor said, okay, we're gonna play my style of football. Felipe Anderson and Luis Alberto out and see how things goes. And I think we saw very good signs. Um, it was unfortunate that the Dumfries scored, and it was a copy of a goal we considered a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not wrong. Again, Maruzic unable to defend on a cross, and this is ridiculous for me, but very encouraging signs, right?
Yeah, one of the talking points recently for us has been Rovella, particularly, but also Pellegrini not being given a chance and them being the outliers, because Tudor, generally the theme of the last couple of months has been how he has been giving everyone a chance, really. So both of them ending up in the starting lineup was nice to see. I thought they both played pretty well, and for Rovella, I guess this is the encouraging thing, is that we kind of landed on the assumption that what's keeping him out of the team more than anything was how well Kamada was playing. And if he's going to have two in there, it's probably going to be one more physical player and one more kind of technical player. But now Kamada has pushed up to that, trequartista role instead and played so well there. That does offer an opportunity for Rovella to kind of get a foothold in this team a bit. And I think, again, we saw, it was a reminder of the importance that he had for this team defensively under Sarri as well, because he does position himself really well in terms of getting between the lines and intercepting balls and kind of blocking things. And it's not something he's necessarily famous for, but I think positionally he's a good player defensively. But Kamada is just such a good player. I mean, I feel like we're kind of on repeat with this every week, but by now, I mean, the club must be settled surely on the fact that they want him to stay. And I hope that he is feeling more and more convinced, because he's able to play in all these different roles. He's clearly one of the most important players for Tudor. And, this team will be in Europe again next season. I just hope it feels like enough for Kamada that he wants to be a part of this.
Can we say that Kamada was the biggest mistake of Maurizio Sarri this season?
I think it would be harsh to judge Sarri in retrospect that way, because Kamada suits this football more. This is more akin to a style that he's played in the past, and obviously there are more options of areas of the pitch he can play. I think we would have obviously liked Kamada to play more. We can criticise him from the fact that from January onwards until he resigned, there was almost no sign of Kamada.
No.
But you have to remember that Sarri's style of football is very rigid in terms of it never changes from the 4-3-3. And Kamada's options in that system were pretty restricted because of the fact that Guendouzi and Alberto had locked down the only two positions he could really play in.
But then again, why did you sign him?
Well, I don't know how much Sarri had to do with that. Do you? I mean,
well, I hope it did, because otherwise, I mean, but yeah, well, maybe I'll change. Maybe I hope he didn't have nothing to do with that, because otherwise that would be a huge mistake. Anyway, you mentioned two of the players starting for the first time, Rovella and Pellegrini. What about Provedel finally starting with Igor Tudor?
Well, yeah, I mean, we had a big discussion about Provedel and Mandas last week, and this is a reminder for anyone who was getting swept away in the kind of recency bias of how good Mandas has been. Provedel comes back in the team and reminds everyone of why he is and should be considered the number one. I mean, I was really impressed, considering how long he's been out injured, considering who he was up against. I think a few of the saves were kind of showreel saves. I think he made some of them look a bit harder than they actually were. But it was a really good performance from him, and a reminder of why he is the number one at Lazio.
Well, after what you said, I can imagine tomorrow Lazio newspaper saying that this was a showcase to sell Provedel better. Right? Yeah, he played against Inter. Look, 70 million euros.
Yeah, just clip it all up and put it on social media.
Talking about Provedel, I said that one of the things why he needed to play these two last games, especially yesterday, was for the Euros. Do you think he's going to be called up? Because I think Vicario, he should be starting, but he won't. Donnarumma is the starter, which I don't agree, honestly.
Yeah.
But Provedel should be fighting for the third goalkeeper role. I think he's better than Meret, honestly. But you have to take in consideration Carnesecchi, right? He's the youngster. He's been good this season. Not great, but good. Do you think Spalletti is going to call Provedel for this third goalkeeper role? And do you think he deserves it?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this week there's been a lot more chats starting to happen. I mean, Spalletti's obviously been talking a bit as well, but around what the Italy squad's going to look like. And, you know, some of the stuff I was reading was kind of saying the third keeper choice is between Carnesecchi and Meret, and Provedel wasn't even mentioned. I think Provedel's had a much better season than Meret. I think he had a much better last season than Meret, despite winning the title. So I think he has a strong argument to make. The injury is clearly gone against him. I think Carnesecchi will be called up. And I think a big part of the reason for that is, I guess, if you're going to a major tournament and you're taking three keepers, you probably are looking to the future. You can look to the future a little bit more with the third choice one, because you're unlikely really to need to use them. Because, like you say, Vicario probably will be the number two. So on merit, Provedel deserves to be in there, I think, with the way he's played in the last 18 months. But I think he's just been unfortunate with the timing of the injury, and also with the timing of Atalanta absolutely flying at the end of the season, and Carnesecchi being a big part of that. So that's my gut instinct. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, if Spalletti calls Meret, it's embarrassing decision. But it makes sense, as you were mentioning, to call Carnesecchi instead of Provedel. I still think Provedel at the moment is better, but, you know, it makes sense. There's a huge risk, Alasdair, that in the Azzurri list there will be no Laziali, which is weird, seeing how many Italians do we have in the squad. And yes, I understand Immobile has been poor this season, and Zaccagni has been injury prone. But I don't think if Zaccagni is fit that we have better wingers than Mattia Zaccagni in the national team, right? I know you're thinking about Scotland, but for a moment,
always. No, I mean, I think Zaccagni is definitely the strongest contender. I mean, I think he could easily end up in that squad. It seems like there's a couple of places open there to have a couple of attacking slots that are kind of in doubt. I think Zaniolo's out now, isn't he? He got an injury.
Well, I mean, if you call Zaniolo, he hardly played this season.
I know, but he was always in the squad. That's the thing. I mean, I would have, not because he deserves it, but I would have expected Zaniolo to be in the squad just because Spalletti loves him. So yeah, I guess it's kind of between guys like Politano, Orsolini, trying to think who else, who that kind of level, who have been kind of consistent this season, and where Zaccagni fits in. I think Zaccagni's got a lot of talent, but obviously the question is which version of him you're going to get, which we've seen a lot this season. It's been a bit hot and cold.
Going back to Lazio, you mentioned talent. What can we say about Tati Castellanos? I mean, he scored a nice goal, but it was clearly offside. I didn't celebrate it. I could see it from the beginning. And then he wasted a couple of good opportunities. Again, he's fighting for the team. He's not, he's trying his best, I think. And this is probably what concerned me more. I mean, he had a huge opportunity in the second half. You at least have to find a way to shot on target there, right?
Well, what I learned this morning is that Tati Castellanos has got some very good friends at Lega Serie A, because I just rewatched the highlights video on YouTube this morning, and they haven't put his one-on-one into the highlights, which I find kind of amazing, because it was a
But they
huge
put the
moment.
goal that they canceled that was offside.
Yeah, they put that one in, and that was a lovely finish. So I was thinking he's the best offside finisher in the league. You know, he had this overhead kick against Napoli, and now this. I mean, beautiful. But
I think it was deflected, this one.
do you think so?
Yeah, seeing the replay on live yesterday, the Acerbi deflect the ball slightly.
Even if it was, I mean, it's still a nice finish, because he's
Yeah,
one-on-one with a defender. He has to get the shot away into the corner. So I mean, I do feel bad for the guy. It feels like, you know, like the Napoli overhead as well. These kind of moments that could be a big break for him are going against him, and it does feel like, well, it was the same thing in that Napoli match, wasn't it? And then he has as a howler later on to kind of, just as everyone's getting their hopes up again, he reminds you of why you're criticizing and why you have doubts about him. I thought he actually had a decent game otherwise. You know, I thought he was linking up pretty well with the team, holding the ball up. He was making good runs, getting into good spaces, and finding opportunities for himself. But yeah, it's just the constant problem, isn't it?
I mean, you're number 9. You should be scoring. Yeah, fighting, linking with the others, etc. But your job at the end of the day is scoring, or at least providing assists, which he didn't.
I was thinking yesterday, he's a bit like Felipe Caicedo, but without the late goals. You know, he's a really useful team player, and he feels like he fits in the team, and you know that he's got a role to play. But you feel like he needs a foil, because Felipe Caicedo's not. We loved Caicedo, but he wasn't someone we ever thought of as a realistic, you know, first choice number 9 who could lead the line when Chiro was out. He was just a really handy player in the squad who chipped in with important goals, but was a good team player, a good partner for another striker. And Castellanos doesn't have a partner, I guess, is the issue. He does feel more like a player who would benefit from not being on his own up there. But yeah, he will be around next season, though. I mean, that seems like absolutely guaranteed by now, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, do you think someone is going to come and pay us 50 million euros for a striker who's famous for missing goals? Don't think so. But do you think Tudors need to change and put maybe a second striker close to Castellanos to help him?
Well, I mean, he kind of does with the system he uses. I mean, it just depends. It feels like they're still working that out a bit, because it depends who's playing in those, you know, 2 trequartista roles. Because when Zaccagni's in there, for example, he's more naturally wanting to come wide all the time and find his way into space. So he's not really necessarily always close to the striker. Or if it's someone like Kamada or Alberto, they're wanting to come deep and go looking for the ball more often, because that's their natural instinct. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard people even suggest that Castellanos is used in one of those positions rather than as the number 9, but I'm not convinced, because I think that is more of a midfielder's role than a kind of second striker's role. But I don't know. I mean, we do know, don't we, by now, that we have to sign another striker this summer, surely.
Well, if Chiro stays, if Tati stays, then I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen, right? I mean, you cannot have 3 strikers.
Why not? Or I mean, the other option is, I'm not using this as someone I think we should go. I mean, it'd be great, but as an example of a kind of player, like a Raspadori style of player who could actually realistically play in either of those roles. That would be ideal. Someone who could be played as a number 9, but equally could be in the team as a number 10. I mean, it's going to be expensive to find someone like that, but
Felipe Anderson.
Yeah.
Alasdair, we've been talking about the starting 11. What about the changes, the substitution Tudor made, because I'm not sure he did the right moves, right? Bringing on Luis Alberto was dreadful. Taking off Kamada Rovella and maybe not subbing Castellanos and putting Ciro and giving him a chance against Inter. What's your take on the? And it's not the first time we've talked about it after Monza Lazio, right? Saying that Tudor made the wrong decision in the substitution. Do you think he did it again?
Possibly. I mean, I did see he said Alberto and Felipe came on more so that they had players who could hold on to the ball better. And I guess fresh legs in that area of the pitch, where people might be flagging a little bit. I just think I know Tudor is a fan of the 5 subs. I just do think it makes things difficult. It does create, the last 20 minutes of any football match now is just a bit mad because the teams have changed so much. They can kind of throw everything off balance a little bit. And I think some coaches have adapted to that better than others, but it's a difficult thing to manage 5 changes, especially with a squad where you don't have, Inzaghi, for example, at Inter is still doing exactly the same thing he always did at Lazio. At 60 minutes, he'll always change the wing backs. He'll bring on another one of his strikers to replace one of the other ones, maybe a midfielder. And you kind of know, you have a sense of stability from that almost because you know what's going to come. But with Lazio, I feel like the changes are affecting the team more probably because they're not as settled in this system yet.
Yeah, and they're changing, but in negative, I would say. Lazio was playing better before. I think Luis Alberto was dreadful. He didn't want to play, and he didn't play, basically. So that's a huge mistake.
You think he's checked out? He's handed in his hotel key.
Yeah.
He's packed his bags.
I mean, with Inter pressing so much, I don't think the right move was putting the Luis Alberto in. It's true to say that we didn't have that many options. I thought Ciro could have been a solution. He's fresh. You can play long ball and hope Ciro wins 1-on-1 against the tired Inter defenders. So I thought that would have been a better solution. And again, even Cataldi coming in, didn't like Cataldi again. I don't think he did pretty much anything. So it's true. We're not Inter. We don't have a huge... Even though yesterday we had plenty of solutions, right? Guendouzi, Luis Alberto, Felipe Anderson, Ciro, Lazzari. We had a lot of starters on the bench, but...
And look, I mean, I think it's worth putting it in perspective a bit, though. It was disappointing to concede the goal so late on. It was really disappointing that Tati missed that chance when it could have been 2-0. But it would be hard to argue a draw wasn't a fair result. Inter also had their fair hit the post. Providel made a whole load of saves. I mean,
yeah.
It's fair enough, and it's a good result. It's not a result to be negative about for sure.
Yeah, we needed a win, so it's for this reason that it looks bad, right? But I mean, last win in San Siro was 2019, I think, with Milinkovic Savic, and after that, I think we lost every single game, and some of these were horrible performance, right? Last year, we were 1-0 up. We wasted a huge opportunity, and then we lost 3-1, if I'm not wrong, right?
I think the other thing that's, again, I don't think this is necessarily the game to look at and say this is a huge problem individually in this match, but just over the course of the season as a theme to consider once again is the way that this Lazio team can't hold on to leads. And I saw earlier this morning we're up to now 20 points that have been lost from winning positions this season. It's a lot, Vittorio, and to add insult to injury, it's only been flipped around twice. There have only been 2 games this season where Lazio have come from behind to win points.
And it was against the same team, right?
Both against Frosinone, because Castellanos hates them.
Yeah. I mean, with those 20 points, we will be fighting for the Scudetto.
Yeah, and realistically, you're not going to get all those 20, but even if you get half of them, it changes the entire complexion of the season. And the other thing is that is not a new thing this season. That was a problem last year as well, which we talked about. That's why the defense was so important last season, because it felt like the only way we would win games is by keeping a clean sheet. So I don't know what Tudor can do about that over the summer to stop this from happening, but it is a repeated theme, isn't it?
Yeah. Change players. I think that's the only solution, I think.
You think it's a mentality issue?
Yeah. Well, I don't remember, to be honest with you, but I think Marusic allowed the same goal as yesterday a couple of weeks ago, right? A cross, and he's tall, but he doesn't jump, and the player ahead of him. I don't remember the goal. And they score like that.
Was it one of Juric's goals?
Could be. Yeah. No, I think against Juric is Casale, right? But something like that,
Yeah.
So it's seeing it's like repetition going on and on and on. So yeah, it's hard to see it. Talking about repetition, Alasdair, one of our best video on YouTube is we visiting the Stadio Flaminio. We had huge updates going on. So I don't know. Do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, well, we did our first Flaminio video, 4 years ago, maybe 3, something like that. And then we went back and did another one towards the start of the season. I'm sure there'll be more to come, because this is a subject that rolls on for years and years and years. However, something that has happened now, seemingly, that we've been waiting for and talking about in these videos, is that a project does actually exist, seemingly. And Vittorio, we don't yet have, I guess, it's not been publicly made available, but the kind of people saying good things about it are encouraging, because the assessor of sport, who is very much a key figure in these things, has been incredibly complimentary about it. And it seems more hopeful than it has been for a while, just that Lotito is actually doing something. Actually, there's some tangible progress here.
Yeah, the assessore of the sport of Rome said it's a beauty. It's a really nice project. He said that, in particular, he loves the statue of Vittorio Campanile in front of the Curva. So that's really good to see it. But apart from jokes, yes, he said that him and the mayor already saw this plan, and it's amazing. So we're just hoping that he presented the official. Lotito said, before presenting officially the project, I want to visit the stadium and check everything is fine, which I don't understand why. Because if you did the project, I mean, you did it on the basis of the stadium now. So, but I mean, crossing fingers, it's a huge step forward. The Onorato, the assessor of the sport, said that in 11 months, if Lotito presents the project now, we could be starting building the new stadium, which maybe for our listener in the US, it's unbelievable, because probably in the US in 11 months, they already built the stadium. But thinking that in 11 months they will start the works in Rome, it's unbelievable, Alasdair, right?
I find that incredibly hard to believe. Yeah, I mean, look, what we're talking about here, by the sounds of it, is around 50,000 seats, which I think is pretty much spot on what you would want for a Lazio stadium. The problem of the roof, which was a big issue we've discussed before, seems to have been solved, so it's been it would be completely covered. Thankfully, when you're talking about Lotito wanting to make sure in the background that everything's been done right before being official, I think the architectural value question of it, which we've talked about a lot before, seems to have been addressed, and they've even, I think, found some sort of 1960s design that they're following, or something like that, where they're trying to honor the vision of the original building or whatever. So it's positive. They're talking about having shops all across outside it, a Lazio museum at the stadium. It's all the kind of stuff that we wanted from a new stadium is what they're now talking about doing by restructuring the Flaminio. Just to underline once again, for anyone who hasn't seen us talking about this before, the Stadio Flaminio is pretty much central Rome. I mean, it's walking distance from Piazza del Popolo, the Centro Storico, the metro line. It's on a tram line. I mean, it would be an amazing place, access-wise, right in the historic heartland of like Lazio area, where the club has played before. Blah 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 blah. I mean, we really want this to happen. We really want this to happen. So we've had a few false dawns in the past, and I hope, Vittorio, that this is actually getting somewhere this time.
Yeah, it would be a game changer. I think this is the important thing that fans have to understand. Building a stadium, your stadium, in the center of Rome means that you're going to be able to make money not only during the match day, but during the week, because the tourists coming out from Piazza del Popolo will take 5 minutes to get the stadium. And with the shop open, maybe you buy the Lazio shirt, etc., you can increase the revenue. And we said it, Lazio revenue are so low that a new stadium, a stadium of your property, would be a game changer for Lazio. We will be able to sign you bigger players, spend more money in the transfer market, etc., etc. Just see the impact the Juventus stadium had with Juventus, and apply that to Lazio. That would be a huge game changer. So they said in 11 months they hope to start building. The stadium should be ready in 3 years' time, which I know for our American listener it's a long period, but just don't forget that for building the Juventus stadium, it took 2 years and 10 months. So it's not a long journey. And, it would be amazing.
That would be light speed for Italian stadium building. I would be absolutely stunned if that happened. It's worth mentioning back what you were saying, that currently is the opposite. Lazio have to pay rent to use the Stadio Olimpico. So the Olimpico is owned by CONI, and I think it's 4 or 5 million. I did look this up once in the past, which is, about Ciro Immobile's salary per year that they're losing on actually paying to use the stadium they're in. So, yeah, proper game changer. The only thing I'm not quite sure about, I've not read about in any depth at all, is that there are rivals, who are also interested in using it, which is the swimming Roma Nuoto, which I'm not entirely sure what that is, and the Credito Sportivo, which I'm even less sure what that is and what they want to do with it. But I know they're there in the background as potential bidders.
Can I say I'm not convinced? I think these were just rumors to create more problems to Lazio. I mean, Credito Sportivo is, for people who don't know it, an organization that was built from CONI to help clubs, sports organization to build things like a stadium. You apply to the Credito Sportivo, who gives you an amount of money, and the interests are very low, so you don't have problems to repay them back, etc. So I don't think Credito Sportivo is going to use that, because there could be helping Lazio to build it. The Roma Nuoto, I think it's impossible. I mean, building a stadium is going to be a lot of money, and I don't think a swimming pool organization has the money to do it. So I don't think there's that. Now, the biggest issue we didn't mention is money, obviously. You're building a stadium, it's a lot of money. We know, or we imagine, that Lotito won't put a euro on that. So, A, we find a sponsor. B, Lazio will be financing this project on their own. I think it's going to be very complicated. But, I mean, if Lotito presents a project, he already aware of the expenses and how to get the money out of that. So that's the biggest problem, I think.
Yeah, the money side is huge. Like you've already said, you do see that back. I mean, you become a much more profitable club very, very, very quickly if you do this. but there's no getting away from the fact that it would cost millions and millions. And also there's, one of the reasons I'm skeptical about this time frame is that there are so many bureaucratic hurdles to get over, and there's a lot of things still that seem to be a bit unsure about. They have to do surveys around the river and the parking access and traffic and all this stuff. And Roma got really far down the road with their stadium and then had to abandon the entire thing because they couldn't even get as far as digging a hole in the ground because of all these hurdles. So while we're enthusiastic, it is worth tempering that with a little bit of caution, because it's not easy to get these projects going, which is why so few clubs have their own stadiums here.
Well, we have to say something. One of the reasons that should give you a little bit of optimism is, as you were mentioning, there are a lot of laws. It's very difficult, but Juventus made it because they had a stadium there. They destroyed and rebuilt it. There's a Stadio Flaminio there. So a lot of those issues have been already solved. So that's make it much more easier for Lazio rather than Roma to build a stadium brand new. Said this, we have to say that not destroying the Stadio Flaminio and build it up from that structure will cost Lazio more money than starting from scratch. So that's the dark side of that project. But being very realistic, I'm a little bit optimistic that this is gonna end in a positive way, because let's not forget this is really important for me. The mayor of Rome has every single interest that Lazio build a new stadium, because at the moment the Stadio Flaminio is property of the Rome mayor, and go and check our video. It's collapsing. If Lazio doesn't build the stadium, they're going to be forced to pay I don't know how many million euros just to keep it there and don't make it collapse and destroy everything. So that's why I'm thinking that Rome is pushing to help Lazio, and I think that's going to be a difference maker for the project.
Yeah, and it's been there for 14 years now,
Like
with
that.
nothing happening there. So yeah.
Well, let's say that this stadium was built in 1990, so the first time, and then restructuring 1929. So, and then 38, I think. So it's a very old stadium. Obviously, need to be furnished, etc. But we'll see. I mean, that's the positive news, Alasdair. If there's going to be update, if Lotito will finally present it, then probably we're going to do a special edition, right? Like we're going to do next week, probably a season review. Well, no, they still Lazio Sassuolo. We're going to talk about Lazio Sassuolo, and then the week afterwards, probably do a season review.
And we'll get our old polls back up and running for our season awards, Vittorio and Alasdair Lounge Awards. So if anyone out there still uses Twitter, that is where that's where we will put up our polls for people to vote for all the various things. Player of the season, signing of the season, flop of the year, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, we've got that to look forward to. It should be an interesting one this year, actually, because sometimes they're very obvious who's going to win all these things, but there's a few contenders now.
Yeah, I think flop of the year is going to be very competitive this season, right?
Well, it also helped that Milinkovic-Savic has left, because he was just so much better than everyone. But
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, Alasdair, thanks for joining me. Thanks everybody for listening. Please rate and review the podcast, you know where. And if you want to support us, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at $2 a month. Thanks everybody. Take care. We're going to be back after Sassuolo Lazio, even though we still don't know when it's going to play the game. Saturday, Sunday, lunchtime, night game. We still don't know. Serie A, it's a joke, guys. It's really a joke. Take care.